So we're here this evening with John Kelsey. John's a retired automation engineer. Did I get that right, John?
That's right.
Excellent. And John, we're about to have growers from all over Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, and elsewhere attending the 2023 Upper Midwest Hazelnut Growers Conference in Decorah, Iowa. And one of the goals I have in organizing this conference is to feature voices from outside the Midwest to bring some perspective to folks here in the heartland regarding all the great work others are doing to advance hazelnuts as a viable perennial crop throughout the United States. So within that context, let's get started by having you tell me about the place you live and the plants you're growing.
Okay, good. Well, I live in western West Virginia, and it's kind of rough country. It's not mountainous, but it's very hilly. It's characterized as a fractured plateau, and the hill land is mostly forested, and the side hills. And there's two kinds of ag land here. There's river bottoms, and there's creek bottoms. And the river bottoms, they can grow corn and soybeans, but it's been cut up a lot by inheritance into kind of small parcels. And we really can't compete with the big commercial guys out in the flat country. And the creek bottoms are even worse. You can't even turn a combine around. So they are mostly being abandoned. The creek bottoms, they used to raise tobacco, but that market is kind of gone. So there's quite a few cow-calf operations in the creek bottoms, but where they cut some hay. But the cattle have to go out of the state to be fed out. So these small properties are ideal for specialty crops like hazelnuts. And so we're pushing to try and get people to do something better than letting it go to invasives and explorer species. But you can see both Canoa River bottom, which is about a mile wide right here. And you can see both sides, you can see some creek bottoms, which are not forested. But if you turn your head for a few years, they become forested with lousy species of, as far as timber goes. And most people nowadays have a town job.
Sure.
So anyway, we started raising hazelnuts in 2011, and I knew it was something really new for our area, and there's no market. I never worried about that, and but we always considered it very experimental, and we're comfortable here, so it didn't matter. So we're pretty much follow the Oregon agricultural practice. We're training our trees to single stem and harvesting nuts off the ground.
Now that is a view. What are we looking at?
We had a field in front of our house, and my son had Christmas trees in there, and they were over the hill, and that was really looking ugly. So mainly we wanted to have a beautification project. So I didn't really care if we ever got any nuts or not. I wanted this to look good.
Sure.
And I think it does look good. So we get a lot of nice comments from people driving by.
How many trees are here?
We got about 5 acres, I think.
5 acres. Wow. And would have this been one of your first plantings?
No, those trees right there are 2014.
Pretty picture, pretty picture.
That
So
that was the idea.
do you when you say you train them to a single stem, so are you cutting back any suckers then or doing any management to keep them to that single stem, or will they just naturally grow as that single
No,
stem tree?
no, no, no. It's some work. Yeah, you bet. It's trouble.
Tell me about that.
Well, we keep the place mowed like a golf course, and every other time I mow, that we mow, I should say, uh, I just take a string trimmer and knock those little suckers off. And if they don't let them get, oh, about, if they get over about 10 inches tall, they become a little woody and then you can't use a string trimmer. So it's pretty important to keep them off. I think every other time I mow, I have to trim them off. It's just like cutting weeds, but it doesn't take just a second.
So let me ask you this, John. When it comes to soils, um, is it rocky? Is there some decent soil down by the river bottoms there? Is it gravelly? Is it some nice loamy stuff? Is it a mix of everything? Give me a sense of what sort of soils you're dealing with there.
Well, it's uh, it's alluvial soil, and we're 10 miles from the Ohio River. Now the Ohio River Valley, it's about the same size as the Kanawha River Valley, but there's glacial rivers coming from the north into the Ohio, but there was no glaciers ever further south than the Ohio River. So our this soil came off the Smoky Mountains to the south. The Kanawha River is running north, and so it's alluvial, good loam and clay, not much sand, no gravel, nothing. There's nothing glacial in this soil. On the bottomland, we can raise crops as good as anybody. We get the same corn production, soybeans, great. Well, you asked a question earlier about how I got into this. So we had planted 30 acres of black walnuts for timber, and that's what this is. And we started in '95. So these trees, I can't remember when this picture was taken, but now they're 28 years old. 6 or 8 years ago, they announced there was a new deathly thing for black walnuts, like it
Thousand
happened,
cankers, thousand cankers. Yeah.
thousand canker disease. And, you know, we just seen the green emerald ash borer and, of course, the chestnut and American elms. But, oh man, I've done all this work. I pruned all those trees. I did a lot of work in here. I've been working on this for years, since
Yep.
1995. And then that's all going to go down the tubes as some blight. And I went into about a 4 year funk. And so I said, I got to do something else. That's how I got into well, so it must have been in 11, because that's when I planted the hazelnuts. That must have been around 2011 when that announcement came out. So I even cut off some young walnut trees to plant those hazelnuts. And but it turned out it's not as scary as I thought. So I guess I didn't need to worry. But I thought about raising all different kind of nuts. Of course, of course, hickory nuts the best flavored nut. But I was 80 years old, so that's not a very good idea. So it came down to chestnuts or hazelnuts. Chestnuts would attractive in a way because there already is a market. There's no market for hazelnuts, but I like hazelnuts. I like hazelnuts better. I like the taste better, so that's why hazelnuts won. I've often thought you could take at the at your Super Bowl party, you put all these nuts out in dishes and see which ones disappear. That would tell you what to grow.
The ultimate taste test. I love that idea, John. Fantastic. Well, tell me what's going on here, John.
Oh, I bought a harvesting machine from Italy. My wife and I were down on the ground on our hands and knees picking up nuts, and she says, "Isn't there a machine you can buy to do this?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "There's a nice machine with a big vacuum hose you can buy for $7,000." Or I said, for $14,000 you could get one that you can drive around. And she said, "I'm getting the $14,000 one 3 days after you die." So I thought that was pretty nice of her to wait until I was cooled off anyway.
So how does this operation work here? How does this rig
Well,
work?
well, one reason that the $14,000 machine, you got to make windrows, and then they go along and pick them up. This guy, it's a big vacuum sweeper. So I want to keep records of my trees because I've got like 50 different varieties, and we're trying to figure out which ones like growing here. So you can see on this trailer behind the harvester, I got a set of scales there, and I want to. In the first planting we had, like every tree is different, and so I weigh each tree, weigh the production from each tree. In this planting right here, they're in rows that are all alike, so I don't weigh it until I get the whole row done. But it's a nice machine, and I just use a big broom rake and I rake them up in a pile. That goes pretty quick, and then I just suck up the piles, and they go in that. You see that plastic tub?
Yep.
There. So they go in there, and it blows out the grass and hulls, and they're pretty clean, but you get some dirt and rocks in there. But it does a pretty good job. And then I pick that tub up and weigh it and dump it into the buckets or something. And I do 4 trees, and then I have to move.
I see that you keep the grass really well mowed. Do you also hit it with a little bit of Roundup or something there to
Yep.
kill it back?
Yeah. I spray Roundup. This picture's a little old. I do bands now. The trees are bigger than this, and I spray in last week in July. And then the grass is dead by the time of that I need to do the harvest. You just can't pick these nuts up out of the grass.
Tell me a little bit about harvest, John. When are you starting to get out there and actually suck up nuts off the ground?
Well, they start to fall in middle of August. The first time I go around is like September 1st. Then maybe again about 2 or 3 weeks later. I usually make 2 passes. And I don't shake the trees.
You just let them naturally fall to the ground.
Yeah.
Do you have much concern about nut predation from critters, whether it's squirrels or mice or other things?
Well, it's getting worse all the time. And it was just an edge effect, and I kind of ignored it. If you got a big place, the edge effect isn't too bad. But they're getting healthier. They're getting more aggressive.
John, tell me a little bit about your yields. Do they yield pretty consistently? What sort of age are they when they start to yield? Give me a sense for that.
Well, you get a few nuts, and you might get one in the 3rd year and a handful in the 4th year. And there was a time that we counted nuts,
Sure.
to measure production. and instead of weighing them. And but the different varieties, some flower early, like in January, like right now, some are flowering.
Wait, wait,
And some,
wait, John. You have right now, you have plants flowering?
oh yeah,
Get out of
yeah,
town.
yeah. So you can divide the varieties into early, middle, and late. The early ones blossom in January, and the middle ones in February, and the late ones in March. It's all over in March. When the It's all over when the buds break. But uh, the trouble here, and it's the same trouble you have in Iowa, is no lake effect. So you get these temperature wigwags. The jet stream is wiggling around, going back and forth. So we'll have tropical weather for a few days, and then Arctic weather as things swing one way or another. So that uh, when the as long as the flowers are dormant, they can take 20 below zero. But once their flowers are exposed, like when catkins are elongated and stamens are out to collect pollen, oh, I think they're damaged maybe 15 degrees plus 15 will wreck them
Oh, wow.
for the year. So uh, we seem to have one or maybe two of these temperature wigwags, a 1-2 punch, I call it, and they'll damage one of those groups of varieties, like the early one, if it happens in January, or the middle one, and it seems like the late ones are get damaged more than the early and middle ones. Jefferson is late, and another one from New York called Geneva is late, and they've been failing. They're great when they're on, but they're like on 1 year and off 3.
Okay.
But one variety called Yamhill, it flowers early and it flowers for a long time, and it has never failed. And like in 2021, everything was on. There were no varieties that were injured, so we got a big harvest that year. Last year, 2022, was about a half as much.
And
So
do you
I
attribute
keep.
that to the to the flowering effect, or
Oh
was it
yeah,
an
oh yeah,
okay?
definitely.
Okay.
So I keep track of the flowering and I keep track of the production, and I can just see it black and white what's going on. I'm kind
Fascinating.
I'm kind of pessimistic. I think I see more damage than really is there. Sometimes I see flowers are damaged and still somehow they manage to produce and get pollinated.
Nature finds a way. Nature
Yep,
finds a
yep,
way.
yep.
John, tell me about some of the varieties that you're growing there in West Virginia.
Well, I just when I started out, I bought everything I could get my hands on that was EFB resistant or immune, and that was the varieties from Oregon State and from Cornell. A couple varieties that Ernie Grimo has in his nursery up there in Canada, and then some of the old-fashioned ones, which probably weren't resistant. But now, then a couple of years ago, Rutgers started coming out with releasing some varieties. So I've got those too, but they're not up to speed yet. They're they're in kindergarten.
So you've got a nice mix of some of the cultivars from Oregon, some of the other material from just other sources, including Grimmo's.
Uh-huh.
Um,
I think I got everything. I don't have many hybrids, but my everything is straight European. But I think I got about everything that's supposed to be EFB resistant.
and have you seen any EFB at your place there in West Virginia?
No,
So far, so good.
so far so good. But one old guy in West Virginia who had tried hazelnuts years ago, he said it's slow. He says it takes 10 years to show up and 10 years to kill your trees. And so I've been at it 12 years, and so I'm due for it to show up, I think.
Okay.
And I don't care. I talked to Oregon State and Rutgers. I said, should I inoculate these trees? And they said no. Says enjoy it while you can.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but there are American hazelnuts around here, within a mile or so from here, plenty of them. So the EFB should be around here.
Well, tell me about that. So, are the wild ones or the American hazelnuts that are around there, would they be flowering at that same time? January, February, March?
Yes,
Okay.
I got some American growing here just for kind of like like they put the canary in the mine, and they're very late
Late. Okay.
in March, I'd say. Yeah.
You take records, John, of some of the different
Every
varieties.
yes, yes, that's what I'm doing here. So I weigh them, and then I get a sample for cracking to test the kernel quality.
And I see a couple of labels there. York, is that one? Maybe
Yeah,
Doris?
yeah, at York and Doris. The other one doesn't have a name; it's got a number. That's from Rutgers, 1235. But so I get about 40 of these little tubs.
And that
Then,
represents all of the harvest from that tree.
oh no,
No,
that's a sample.
sample. Gotcha.
So here, after the harvest is all over, I I crack these nuts. So I got that board there. It's got 50 holes,
Mm-hmm.
and so I crack 10 nuts to measure the kernel percentage. And you see those three little cups? I put the shells in one cup and the kernels in another, and then weigh them on that scale right there.
Yeah.
And then I crack 50 nuts. So here I start the good nuts from the right and the bad nuts from the left, and they meet somewhere in the middle. You can see about 10 bad nuts there on the right end of
Okay.
the board. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So that's 20%, 20% bad.
And do you feel you need to get that 50, get that sample size of 50 to get a good representation of what might be good, might be bad?
Well, I'm just copying the way that Rutgers does it.
Gotcha.
Each nut there's worth 2%.
What's your favorite?
Favorite nut? Oh, I think the ones from Rutgers, they're not coming in yet, but I have really high hopes for them. And they're available from, they've got an agreement with a nursery called Foggy Bottom Farm in New Jersey. And the state of New Jersey supports their research, so they were kind of New Jersey first for a while, but I think about anybody can get those now. And they've got their tissue culture source cranking now, so they can really turn out the plants. They shouldn't be selling out like all the other nurseries are that are trying to do it by layering.
Sure.
The tissue cultures, they can get them by the millions. So I got high hopes for the Rutgers material.
And what gives you hope? Is it the kernel quality, the percent kernel? Um,
Oh, they're just so careful you can't imagine it, Jeff. Uh, they had like 80,000 hand pollinated plants, and they released 4, named them and released them. That's 1 in 20,000.
wow.
So the best nut I had last year is it had just a number 11R10. That's the best nut I had. They rejected it. I get some beta trials from them,
Sure.
and they rejected it because of blanching.
Oh,
Well, I never worried about blanching before, you know.
sure, sure. I want production, or I want
Yeah,
percent kernel.
they're checking every which way. They might be one out of this field that they'll. And then, you know what they do? They propagate it. They get a good one. They propagate it, and then they mow all these down, including the good one.
Only the best of the best they keep. So in your
Yeah, because
case,
they
they're
need the land. They need the land. It's worth $1 jillion out there in Oregon.
and then in your case, the the ones that Rutgers are rejecting are the best ones that you've seen so far, and so that gives you pretty high
Yeah,
hopes. That's
as hard
good.
as they do. Yeah, I named that. I named that plant Castaway because they threw it away.
Castaway. Well, so are these plants that are coming from Rutgers and Foggy Bottom Farms, are they going to be Avellanas then? Are they going to be the Europeans?
Yes.
Or are they hybrids? They're Europeans.
Oh,
Okay.
they're all European.
Yeah.
The trouble with the stuff from the West Coast is that they only have one strain of EFB out there. So when you bring the Oregon material back east, it 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 can get the EFB.
Gotcha.
But Rutgers, they have so much EFB up there, they really got the high pressure. They just brought all the American stuff in there they could get, and they actually take infected branches and tie them in the new trees.
Intentionally get them infected
Yeah,
if they're going to get them and push that.
inoculate them. Right.
Okay. Tell me something that you've learned.
I went a little bit too soon. I still was believing the hype from the nurseries, and I should have waited until I got my own data. On the right is Jefferson, and on the left is Yamhill. Yamhill's good; it always produces, but Jefferson has been off more than it's on. It has bad years, 3 out of 5 maybe. So here you can see the root sprouts coming up. I haven't trimmed them off yet. That's about the time I trim them, when they're about 8 inches long. I put those spiral wraps on there. So when I started out, I used tree tubes. When they get about 1 inch in diameter, I change over to spiral wraps. The tree tubes are, I use Roundup to keep the grass back away from the trees, and the tree tube is good at just like having a shield, a herbicide shield, so I can spray and not worry about getting it on the plant too much. And we don't have really a problem with browsing, but we do have a problem with antler rub. And these spiral wraps stop the antler rub. And then when they're up to about 4 inches, these spiral wraps don't stay on there very good. Those spiral wraps are 2 feet long, and they cost me 30 cents when I bought them a long time ago. So they're probably quite a bit higher now.
Looks
So,
like we have a meeting of the minds here.
well, that's a NNGA meeting in Ohio. And this is at Bud Lure's place. And Bud was in kind of bad shape. That's him in the cart. He's not with us anymore. But these are his hazelnut trees. And he liked, his best tree was Butler. I think it gets EFB, but it sure is a high producer. So I got my Butler from him.
Boy, this is just so different than what we grow here in the Midwest here, John, with these multi-stemmed shrubs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these are like nice little understory trees for almost an urban setting that we would be specking like a service berry or a crab apple or something like that. So this is just amazing that these are hazelnuts we're looking at here.
Well, Oregon standard spacing is 20 by 20. And Bud told me to go with 16 by 16, and I wished I'd have made it bigger because the canopy closes up even at 20 by 20. These are big trees. They're big as a standard apple. And of course, American is a little bush like a lilac, and hybrids are about halfway in between. But I really like the Midwest plan to using the blueberry harvesting machine and raise them in hedges.
Mm-hmm.
And I just that whole concept wasn't around in 2011, so I followed the Oregon pattern. I probably wouldn't have done it the other way anyway, because nobody can afford a blueberry picking machine with 5 acres.
When you compare a $80,000 or $120,000 blueberry picker to the $7,000 pull behind model or the $14,000 riding model, it's a big difference. What sort of maintenance pruning? Do you do much pruning at all?
Well, not much, very little. The main thing is branches hit me in the face on the lawnmower, so that I won't tolerate.
Yeah, get them up.
So yeah, when I'm walking around, anything below eye level, I think needs to come off pretty much. If it's like starting like 3 feet from the tree, that's where my face is when I'm mowing. So yeah, I prune them from the bottom up, and I try to keep a wine glass open center shape. So at an early stage, like you cut some of the middle out, and that just about does it. They seem to want to grow that way. So there's almost no correction after you first get them started in that wine glass shape.
Gotcha.
You can kind of see the wine glass right here.
Yep.
And Yamhill, it has kind of a drooping character, not as bad as a weeping willow, but I do have to keep coming back and trimming some off on the Yamhill once they hit me in the face. I got a new little hand-operated electric chainsaw from Steel. I'm going to start carrying it on the lawnmower and just wipe them out right as I'm going along. It's a 4-inch blade, and it'll cut off a 2-inch limb.
Wow, that's cool. Technology, ain't it grand?
Yeah, yeah. And the battery lasts a couple hours. That's a good reason to quit.
There you go. Built-in timer. A lot of growers are trying to determine the best way to market their crop. Any thoughts on either what you've done or what you've seen or what others might be doing in your neck of the woods?
Well, I've just ignored marketing altogether. I'm just not interested in it. That's something for somebody else to do. Uh, but I do, I did, I don't have any trouble getting rid of our nuts. And I, I got two big customers, and both of them would take the whole whole crop. One one makes some hazelnut liquor.
Go on.
Yeah, I brought a bottle to the Nut Growers National Meeting for samples. Did you not
Yes,
try it?
I do remember that quite well. It was a little strong for me. I remember
Yeah.
sitting down after I took that little tug.
I think it's 40 proof. It's very nice, really. You don't want much of it.
What type of a liqueur is it?
It's I think he starts out with bourbon, and then he puts yeah, I think he puts 25 pounds of hazelnuts in a barrel, and the alcohol extracts the flavor out of the hazelnuts. And then he puts in some honey to get the sharpness out of the alcohol. And so I think those are the three main ingredients: is bourbon and hazelnuts and honey. He gave me the hazelnuts back afterwards, and they taste horrible. I couldn't hold them in my mouth, but the chickens ate them. They loved them.
Did the chickens get drunk?
I don't know. I don't have chickens. I gave them to the neighbors who has chickens. These are they're roasted hazelnuts, and then I dipped them in chocolate. And you'll have no trouble getting rid of these.
Sure, sure.
They're
Hazelnuts
wonderful.
go best with chocolate, absolutely.
Oh yeah. And then I make what they call bark. It's easier to make. I crush I roast the nuts and then crush them, and then mix them in with chocolate. But I try to get more. I'm trying to sell hazelnuts, not chocolate. So I want more hazelnuts than chocolate in the bark. I put a lot of hazelnuts in the bark. Just enough chocolate to hold it together.
Sounds like something I would enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Do you have any advice for prospective growers, new growers, maybe experienced growers, old hands, as we might call them? What are your thoughts?
Well, the I would first my advice would be to follow the university programs, and that's Oregon State, Rutgers, and the Midwest, Minnesota, and Wisconsin program up there. If That's the hybrid program. But these guys, nurseries can't afford to do this, and what I found is that universities typically are naming one tree in 10 or 20,000, and nurseries are naming one tree in 100. And Cecil Ferris, who's the famous, wrote the book, The Hazel Tree, he named one in 10. So you can kind of expect that kind of quality. You can see that kind of quality. So my advice is to follow the university programs and beware of nursery hype. We've had some bad experiences with nurseries. I ordered 5 cultivars, 5 each, 25 plants. And I'm not going to say who the nursery was, but I got 25 plants. And after 5 years, I figured out that I only had 3 kinds. So I ordered what I wanted. They sent me what they had.
Sure, sure.
But Foggy Bottom and Ernie Grimo's nursery in Ontario, and Burnt Ridge, which is out in the Northwest. They're honorable, those three.
Tell me about Grimo. What sort of material do you have? Do you have some of the Aldaras, the Andrews, Northern Blaze, Marions, Franks?
Yeah, he has two varieties that he managed to save that came from a big Cornell program that was discontinued during World War II. And that's Geneva and Slate. Slate ran the program at Cornell, and their experimental stations at Geneva, New York. Those two are good. The rest you need to test, see if they're good at your place. My second piece of advice is to join the NNGA, and every time I've ever gone to any meeting, state or national, you always come back with a gem, and you need to give a little too. Give some support and give your experiences. They're always welcome to listen to everybody.
Great advice.
Anyway, the last thing to say about it is you don't have to learn everything by making your own mistakes. You can find out what other people did.
That, I think, is some of the best advice of all. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with the Iowa Hazelnut Project, and essentially work with growers, bring new growers on, learn from one another. And we're trying to really validate some of the assumptions that are being made about some of these different cultivars, or I really call them experimental genotypes. Mm-hmm. So really pleased to hear you confirm that and reinforce that.
So as far as marketing goes, I think for a small grower to have any success, you gotta have some value added in the equation. It's going to be pretty tough if you don't.
Well, I love the idea of mixing it with alcohol. Everybody loves a little toddy or a drink, and to have a hazelnut infused one, I think, is top notch. What's the other market you mentioned?
Another market I have, which is very weird. I guess they're both weird. But this guy, he likes to feed bears, and the bears like hazelnuts.
Well, bears? So, like, yeah, Yogi Bear?
Yeah, in his backyard, he feeds bears.
Whoa. You got guys growing bears in West Virginia?
I think he lives, I don't know where he lives. It might be Pennsylvania or Maryland.
So he just gives them hazelnuts to eat.
Yeah. But he'll take a truckload.
That is amazing. That is one of the most unique markets I have ever heard.
So I was an automation engineer, so I built all this equipment to process these nuts. I got separators and crackers and hullers and everything. I'm on to my third generation of this stuff. And so when I crack these nuts and separate, I get shells and fines and bad kernels and stuff, and I give them to the neighbor that has chickens, and they're just crazy about this stuff. They'll drop anything to go to these hazelnuts. So I don't bother with the fine stuff. It goes to the chickens.
Gotcha.
So this is my last piece of advice. I say, hire good help. That's Miles, my number 2 son there walking away.
Something tells me that's not the right way to plant a hazelnut.
He's low cost help, but that's what you get. I have a website, It's called the scalepit.com.
First question is, what is your fertilizer regime?
Going pretty slow.
Well, I did quite a bit of research on it, and there was a wide variety of recommendations. So I kind of averaged them, and it worked out to about a. It seems like it was a pound of urea per year of age. I think maybe half a pound of urea. Yeah, half of it in May 15th and half of it right after the harvest.
And how would you spread that?
I spread it in bands.
Gotcha.
So, and I've done soil tests, and everything really didn't need any correction. So it's all I do is nitrogen. I use urea, and I have done some foliar nitrogen, and I can see a result in the color of the leaves. You know, I would do a row and skip a row, so I kind of like that. If I'm spraying for any reason, I mix in a little nitrogen. It takes very little.
Next question, John. What do you do with the shells after you crack?
Well, that's kind of interesting. One study I read said that the shells are half the energy you're taking out of the planting. So if you return the shells, you would only need half as much fertilizer. Okay, if you were computing your fertilizer by what you were removing, but that vacuum machine of mine will pick them all up again. So I don't put them back. They go over there. I think they end up as chicken bedding, or maybe in the stove.
Gotcha. So speaking of shells and cracking, what type of cracker do you use?
Oh, it's I build it from scratch. It would be hard to explain. It's got two rollers and with little divots in them, and the trick is to try and just barely break the shells and not crush the kernel. So you need something that's really rigid, and I went to quite a bit of trouble to build this cracker, but Rutgers has one from Italy, and it's simpler and it works just as good. So I did overkill, I guess.
Is that Italian one with Rutgers the same concept with the rollers that'll pull it through and just crack it, or?
It has only one roller and a platen. So that's a lot simpler, and it seems to work okay.
Sure.
And what their roller is nothing but a gear, a big old gear.
Interesting.
Kind of coarse tooth gear.
Something to be able to grab it and pull it through, and that's what that's what the divots do, I imagine, in your cracker. Yeah. Okay. So next question: why is your website called the Scale Pit?
When my wife and I got married, we bought this farm, and there was a kind of a shack of a house, 30 by 30, and it was built on the foundation of a cattle scale. So under our house, we just built onto it and built on and built on. So that old house is somewhere in the middle of our house, and we got a really crappy little basement that used to be a scale pit.
Makes perfect
So
sense.
we just call the place the scale pit.
Excellent. Scott wants to know, what's the typical yield per acre once the hazels have matured? What are we looking at?
Gee, I really don't know. What I could only tell you what I've read. You know, I don't have it as a personal experience.
What about per
But,
tree? What are some of you? What are some of the upper ends of what you might get per tree with some of the
okay,
records you're keeping?
yeah, when Jefferson has been doing well, when it's in a rare year, let's see, I got 5 pounds, and the tree was that was 2 years ago, so it was 10 years old.
5 pounds at 10 years old. Okay. And is that typical? Is that outstanding? Is
Ernie Grimo says that he got 25 pounds from a slate tree.
wow. Wow. That's impressive.
Mm-hmm. So they're only about half size now. So what they will be, they should be full size in 15 or 20 years.
Okay. Well, we're gonna have you back in 15, John, and we'll do another one of these. So
Oh, I'd like to be here.
okay, another question here is gonna be oh, this is a great point from Lois. So Lois or John Lois says, thanks for your perspective on the number of plants that must be evaluated to get a winner. One of the reasons that I like breeding hazelnuts in the Midwest is that our starting point gives us a lot of room for progress without having to evaluate so many. So you got some fans out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Midwest program, they had 80,000 trees by different growers that they evaluated. So they should be finding some really good stuff too.
It is exciting with some of these joint performance trials and hazelnut test plots to see all the different types of plant material, and even getting some of that stuff from Rutgers to try out here. But I tell you what, this is going to be the test winter, at least for me. When we had that big snowstorm right before Christmas, we had 3 days of below wind chills of like 20 to 30 miles an hour, and the wind just blew something fierce. So we'll see how many survive.
Yeah.
Anyway.
The catkins can get damaged by real cold weather, and of course they're more vulnerable when they're expanded. But if it really gets cold, it can wreck them even though they're dormant. So that happened this year. We had 5 varieties. We had it got down to +1. Okay, that's cold, about as cold as it ever gets here, and it did a number on 5 varieties, and one of them was Yamhill, and one was Sacagawea.
So just a quick point to folks that are going to be with us. We didn't get a chance to get into any of the great pollination stuff that John has on that website, the Scale Pit. So definitely check it out. But I'm hoping John will grant me another wish to do another webinar with him specifically on pollination and female flowers and some of the great work that he's done tracking that over time, and some of the great resources you'll be able to find in terms of optimization for pollinators and their compatibility and some things like that. So just wanted to throw that out there. Okay, any other questions from the group before we wrap things up?
This is Lois here.
Oh, hi, Lois.
I want to say, John, are you the one who wrote that paper about chilling requirements? I think it was in the NNGA in the nutshell.
Maybe.
Yeah, well, I look at that and I think to myself, I've been thinking we should do that work, but every time I go out to figure out when different hazelnuts are blooming, I don't get very far around my planting before I freeze and I go in. And it's 2 or 3 days later that I think, okay, now I'm warmed up enough, I can go out and try it again. And by that time, of course, the situation's completely changed and I have to start all over at the beginning. So I've pretty much given up trying to collect that data.
Yeah, my big problem is holding a pencil. My fingers get so cold.
Exactly.
Sometimes I have to skip a week.
Yeah, well, just because you're doing it in January and we're doing it in March, your January probably is just as cold as our March is, so. Well, thank you for doing that work.
Okay.
Well, thanks everyone for coming out. John, I really can't thank you enough again for sharing your experiences with us. This was a lot of fun, and we'll go ahead and get this edited up and posted on the Iowa Nut Grower Association website here, so folks can take a look at it sometime, probably Sunday or Monday. With that, most of the folks that are on this call are registered for the conference, so we'll see you all on Saturday, everyone.